Hi guys, it's Stephanie from Cake Nation, and in today's tutorial we're going to learn how to make this little girl figure. First we're going to make the base for the little girl, so I've just got some of my skin tone modelling paste and I'm just making a flat circle. I'm going to flare out the bottom a little bit just to give it a bit more shape, and this is what we're going to build our dress around. So I've chosen to do my dress in white, but you can pick any colour that you want. So I've got some of the white modelling paste. I'm going to roll it out fairly thin, and then I'm going to take a circle cutter, the largest one that I've got, and cut out a circle. And then because it's not big enough, I'm just going to roll it out a little bit more. You want to take your time to make sure that you get the right size for you. And then I've just used my smallest circle just to cut out the middle bit, and I'm just gluing that down with water. Now I'm going to use various different tools here. I've got some sugar shapers and I've got my other modelling tools. You can use whatever to create this pleat in the fabric. You can use your sugar shapers, you can use a Dresden tool, you can use a stitching tool, you could use a cocktail stick, whatever it is that works best for you. And just keep flicking up parts and using your fingers to smooth it out until you're happy with the look that you've got. Once we've done the base layer, we're going to add another layer on. So we're going to cut out a large circle again, and then we're going to cut out the circle from the middle. And then what I'm going to do with this one is I'm going to cut out quarters of the circle that we've got left over, and then we're going to fold them a bit like you would a fan and stick these in place. Now I found it better to do smaller parts than I did to do one long line and then wrap it round, but you can do whatever works best for you. So you want to just keep building your fabric that you're adding on one by one, using the fold that you're starting off with to hide the join on the other one. You can see that I'm just using my fingers to pull out the bottom of the fondant just to thin it a little bit, and then using my stitching tool just to place the fabric where I want it to be. Haven't used much water with this one. This is the Saracino Modelling Paste that I'm using, and I'm just going to use the sugar shapers just to smooth in that line a little bit, just so that when we add our next layer you're not seeing that underneath that bit of fabric. Once you've put all that bit on, we need to work on the body. Now I want to add this in before I add the final layer of the dressing. We're just going to create a sort of triangular shape, narrowing it down towards the bottom where the waist is going to be. Now this is a young girl that I've done for this one, so we wouldn't necessarily need to put in a mark for any breasts or anything like that, because obviously she's a young girl, so she wouldn't necessarily have that. So do keep checking the size of your body against the figure that you've got so far, just amending it and pulling it in a little bit if needed. I'm just blending in with my sugar shapers where I've used the knife to cut, and we're going to use a small circle just to create the neckline. So I've just got a small round cutter, and I'm just going to push this halfway through the fondant and then drag it up a little bit, and that's going to give us a really nice even neckline. Once you're happy with the shape, you then use a cocktail stick and just a little bit of water or edible glue just to stick that on the bottom of the figure, and you should have something that looks like this. So now we're going to work on our final layer of the dress. So we're going to roll out some white fondant or whatever colour dress you've decided to do, and again just cut the two circles. Now I've stretched this over the body just to make sure that it hides the seam. Once you're happy you've got the right size, just use your fingers just to frill out the edges. Place it back over the top, and we're just going to use some water or your edible glue to stick that on, And again, just using the stitching tool just to create the frills in the front of the dress. Working your way around the dress, putting the frills in where they need to be, and I'm just using the sugar shaper just to smooth in the join. Just keep working your way around the dress, adding in frills where they need to be and smoothing out any joins between the bottom and the top of the dress. Once you're happy with this, we're going to then move on to making the arms. Here's what you should have so far. So before we move on to the arms, we're just going to make a neck to fill in our neckline on the dress. I've got some of my skin toned fondant and I've just created a teardrop shape and then pulled the neck from the bottom of that. Using the sugar shapers just to smooth out the edges and using water just to stick that on the dress. I've put a cocktail stick through the top. This is going to hold our head on, and I've just created some neck detail using the back end of my sugar shaper. Next, we're going to create the arm. So I've just taken some of my skin tone fondant and we're going to roll it quite thin, creating a teardrop on one side, and this is going to create the hand. So you want to cut a line out for the thumb and then shape the hand so it's then straight. And then we're going to put in some fingers. So we're just going to soften those lines up and then we're going to create some fingers. Using the back of our sugar shaper just to create the palms of the hands on the back. And then just to bring it in a little bit where the wrist would be. Now we don't have to do this because we're not going to see that part of the hand, but it's always nice to know how to do it. So we're going to create our 3 lines for our fingers, taking off any excess that we need to just to make sure that those lines are nice and straight. And then we're going to use our scalpel just to take off some of the length, because obviously all our fingers are not the same length. And then we're just going to try and smooth that out with our fingers a little bit. If you can't do it with your fingers, you can use one of your modelling tools just to soften out those lines at the end. Once you're happy with this arm, we're going to move on and we're going to create the arm for the other side. So again, following the same process, we're going to create the hand. Now for this one, because this hand is going to be under the other hand, we don't need to do it as detailed. So still cut out the thumb line and create the shape that you want for the hand, but we're not going to put any fingers in this side because it would just be wasted because we wouldn't see it. Making sure that the wrist is quite thin and taking off any if needed. Does need to be slightly flatter, this one, because obviously the other hand's going to go on top of it. So just testing it out and taking off any excess. Once you're happy, we're then going to stick the arm on to the side of the body, trimming off any excess, using the stitching tool just to put in a mark where the inside of the arm would be. So once you're happy with the arms, we're going to create the face. So I've rolled an oval shape and I'm going to use the little fingers just to create the eye sockets and a balling tool just to create the line near the nose. And then I'm just going to roll my sugar shaper down across the nose while pushing the bottom bit up. And this is going to create a really nice slope in the nose, as most people have. And then we're just going to use the sugar shaper just to push up slightly to give us a better effect of a nose. Smoothing out any lines that shouldn't be there and just pushing that back up and in place. We're going to take our blue sugar shaper and using the really fine end, just pulling the nose up slightly, almost as if you're doing a C shape. And just using your fingers just to soften out any lines. We're going to use the sugar shaper just to push up the nose again and then create the nostrils. Once you're happy with the nose, we're then going to move on to the mouth. So we've got our scalpel and we're going to draw a straight line across, and then we're going to work on the detailing of the mouth. So I'm going to take one of my sugar shapers, draw the line just underneath the nose there, and then try to pull out the top lip slightly. Then we're going to do some dimples either side. Now this is going to create a little bit of a chin. You do dimples either side and then just push up slightly and draw a line underneath, and this is going to create the bottom lip. I'm going to pull out with our scalpel some of the lip area because this little girl's going to have her mouth open. And then just using your finger just to smooth out any areas. Using a modelling tool just to pull that out a little bit more. And lifting up the top lip also. So I'm just going to use the blue sugar shaper just to create the line around the lips. So just defining the lips a little bit and smoothing over any areas where I feel it needs. You need to pull down in the middle of the top lip, and this is going to give you a really nice cupid's bow. Pulling out any of the lips that need to be and just smoothing out the sides. I'm going to put some dimples in the side of her mouth. We're also going to put some dimples in the cheeks as well. If you need to re-smooth over your eyes or check the size of it against the body, then please do so. And then just taking off any excess from behind the chin, because we want it to have quite a nice chin and a section that goes back slightly to create the neck. If you need to, you can pull down slightly on the lips. It'll just make them look a little bit fuller. So you can see here that I'm just using my sugar shapers just to smooth out the skin around, and then we're going to move on to the eyes. So we just want to cut with our scalpel the shape of the eyes. Don't worry if the Saracino gets quite stretchy at this point, it's just that it will be quite hot from all the handling. And we're just going to use the back of our tool to smoothen out the inside of the eye. Trying to create one the same size and in the same place on the other side, and removing it in exactly the same way. Now the really good thing about this modelling paste is you can go over and amend areas that you feel need a little bit of improvement. It does remain soft for quite a little bit of a time, so it does give you that ability to rework over areas, smooth out places and things like that. I would recommend these kind of detailed faces being done with either Saracino or something similar over the flower and modelling paste, as that does set quite quickly. So once you're happy with the face, we're then going to go on and create the eyes. So we've just taken some white modelling paste, rolling into some small balls, and then we're just going to push these into the eye with our modelling tool, pushing it right into the corners and making sure that you smooth out the sides. We're going to repeat this process for the other side. You want to take a ball of similar size and push it in again in the same way. So next we're going to work on the tongue and teeth. So I've got some modelling paste that I've coloured in a dusky pink, and this is going to form the tongue, and then we're going to use some white modelling paste for the teeth. So with the tongue, I've taken a smallish piece and we're going to try what that is in the mouth. It's a little bit too big, so I'm going to reduce the size of it and just use my brush with a little bit of water to pick that up and push that in the mouth. And then we're just going to use the scriber tool just to create the line in the tongue and push it into place. Wet the inside of the mouth behind the top lip and on the bottom, and this is what we're going to use to create the teeth. So you want to take the tiniest bit of white fondant, and we're just going to try that in the mouth and see what the size is like. If it's too big, just take some off and then place it in with your brush and use your tool just to push it in place, making sure that it's stuck down. We're going to do the same for the bottom teeth as well. So you can't really see it too well at the moment, but once we paint the lips, they'll stand out a little bit more. Once you're happy with the shape of the mouth and the positioning of the teeth and the tongue, we're then going to move on to colouring in the eyes. So I've just taken some really light brown fondant, rolled out 2 fairly small circles, and these are what we're going to use to place inside the eye. So this little girl is going to be looking straight forward, so we're just going to try and put the colouring in the centre of the eye, using a little bit of water just to stick that down. And then I've got some of my dark brown sugar flare, and this is what I'm going to use to paint around the eye and create a more natural colouring for the eye. So with a really thin brush, we're just going to take a little bit of the colour and paint around the eye. Now it doesn't have to be too neat because we are going to use a larger brush just to pull that colour in, and it's going to give us a really nice effect for the eyes. So you can see I'm just pulling that colour down, and you can re-go over parts if you want that to be a little bit more darker. Next we're going to create the eye line for the top of the eye. So we need to roll out some black fondant, make sure it's thinner at one side than the other, and then we're going to place this on the eye, trimming off any excess and flicking it out towards the end. And then we're going to create another 2 eyelashes. They're going to sit above that line that we've just created at one side. Using your brush with a little bit of water, just to take off any excess or any dark lines that have been left by what you've put on. Now the 2 eyelashes that we're then going to stick on do need to be rolled really thinly. So you may need to use your brush or a modelling tool to get these placed on. Need to be made with the smallest parts of fondant ever, so it can be quite fiddly. But once you're happy with this side, we're going to go repeat the process for the other side. You can draw these on using some Sugar Flare Midnight Black if you wanted to, and a really thin paintbrush. I do like to use the modelling paste though, as it does hide the join between the eye socket and the eye. It's just a preference, but you can do whichever one you prefer. You can also, if you want to, draw the eyes on, draw the pupils on. I find it easier to do it with fondant. I think you can play about and move it about a little bit, which is easier to get them in the position that you want without having to redo the whole eye. Sometimes when they're painted on, you do have to go through the process of moving it by, removing all of the paint off the eye and then putting it back on again. So this way just works best for me. Once you're happy with the eyes, we're then going to move on to paint the lips. Now I've used the Skin Tone Sugar Flare, but you can use whatever you want to. I wanted to go for a bit of a more natural look with this one because obviously she is quite a young girl, and that's why I chose the pale tone. You could, if you wanted to, once the lips are dry, draw on a small white line, and that'll give it a really glossy effect, as if the light's reflecting off it, which can make it look really shiny. Once the lips are done, we're going to put on the pupils with just some black fondant, and then we're going to add some lower lids. Now for the lower lids, I've just taken some of my Skin Tone Modelling Paste, rolled it really thin, and then you can see I'm just going to stick that on the bottom lid with a little bit of water. Just push it into place with your modelling tool and trim off any excess using your scalpel. So we're going to do the same for the other side, using the water to stick it on and scalpel to take off any excess. And once that's on, we're going to use some of the black sugar flare just to create a line underneath the bottom of the lid. Do use a really small brush for this one because you want it to be really, really fine. If it's too heavy, it's not going to look right. So I'm just going around the eyes with a little bit more of my dark brown just to give it more definition. And then we're going to take some of our blush and just rub that on the cheeks to give it some shading. Next we're going to put the whites in the eyes. This is going to make it look more realistic. Just taking my scalpel to cut them really, really small and using my brush to put them on the face. We're going to use some water or some edible glue just to stick that head on. You just take your time to position it the way that you want it to be. And then we're going to work on the sleeves for the dress. So I'm going to take some of my white fondant and just roll it out quite thinly. And then I'm going to take one of my circle cutters and just use the frilled edge just to create that sort of shape. And then we're just going to stick that over the shoulder. So you can see I've just got a bit of water and I'm just going to place that over the shoulder like that. And we're going to do the same for the other side. After you've done the shoulders, we're then going to create the hair. So I've just taken some of my Saracino and coloured it brown. And as you can see, all I'm doing is I'm rolling out a line of the modelling paste and stretching it and then folding it in half, trimming off the loop, and that's going to be the strands of hair. You will need quite a fair bit of this, and if you're using modelling paste, the flour and modelling paste, I'm not sure you're going to get the same effect, but because this is quite hot and it's sticky and it just stretches really nice and it gives a really realistic hair effect. So once you've trimmed some off, you just want to group it together, usually in strands of, I would say, between 2 and 5, and then we're just going to stick these on the head. As you can see, I've just stuck some on the back there and just using some water just to stick some of the strands together. It's going to stop it from moving about so much. And you just want to carry on building up the hair until you're happy with what you've got. So you can see I'm just placing it on where it needs to be, making sure that we've hidden all areas of the scalp at the back. And then we're going to start working on the front. So you can see I'm placing it where it needs to go, taking into consideration where I've chosen the parting to go. So the parting for this one is going to be right in the middle. If you wanted it at one side, then obviously that's where you would then place the hair. Using my modelling tool just to create extra lines in the top. And just using water just to stick some of the hair to the body. I've decided to put some flowers on the front of this dress, so I've just got some of my modelling paste and put it in a nice, I think it was an aqua colour, and cut out some small flowers and just using some water just to stick those on the front. We're then going to do a belt in the same colour, so just rolling a really thin line that's then going to sit around the waist. Just using a bit of water just to stick that on. We're going to use the same colour again for the neckline as well. So again, just pushing it in place with the brush and trimming off any excess. I did forget that when we did the eyes, I did draw on some eyebrows. So I just took some of my dark brown sugar flare and used a really thin brush to paint these on. Once you're happy with the positioning of the belt, then the figurine is finished. I would leave it a couple of hours before you try to move it onto a cake just to firm up a little bit. But here's what you should have once finished. If you like this video, be sure to hit the thumbs up button and comment down below. To see more of my tutorials, please click the links on the screen now. If you haven't already, hit the subscribe button to stay up to date with my future tutorials. Thanks for watching.